Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy, Red O'Loughlin here. Welcome to the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Don't usually mention this, but it's one of those things I think it's kind of important because of today's topic. I'm a researcher. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, you fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always be treating symptoms. And today I'm honored to have Greg Barnsdale. He was on my show last week on the Corner Bookstore as an author, best-selling author. And we'll touch a little bit on his book here today. But as we get older, things happen. And if we're able to detect it early enough, we generally have a whole lot more options than we don't. And part of Greg's appearance today, we basically labeled it Navigating Life, Legacy, and the Afterlife. And so with Greg's background in the funeral industry, hospice, life insurance, and financial advisory, he's got a wealth of background. And Greg, please join me. Let's go ahead and get ourselves started here today.
Thank you for having me, Red. I appreciate your time.
You started out probably a generation younger than most other people in your first real pursuit. And that pursuit started, if I remember right, Dr. Dorothy Lee, if I remember correctly. She was a major player in the hospice industry way back when, that you kind of got an interest in. Why don't you relay a little bit of that story, and then we'll take it from there.
Yes, Dr. Dorothy Lay, back in the 70s, I believe it was a instrumental physician within the hospice movement here in Canada. And it was in the early 80s that she and I got speaking. I was wondering what career path I would ultimately take. And it was with her guidance and direction that I ended up pursuing a role as a funeral director, actually. And I worked in that industry for quite a number of years, and I'm still licensed today, 40 years later.
The funeral industry is one of those ones that we tend not to think about unless somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, I got a really good deal here for you. My in-laws took advantage of that. And when they passed away, everything was taken care of with the exception of some very minor things. So, and again, on my premise, if you know something in advance, you can take care of it. You have a lot of options. If I wait till the last minute, I may not have as many options, and it may cost me a lot more. And I'm sure that's probably what you've seen in many, many cases.
It is absolutely, Red. The sooner that we can plan and keep an eye on it, especially on our health, I believe that's what you're referring to, but also be planning in advance for things that we may not estimate coming up in our life. But ultimately, all of us will die. And having a will, as an example, is one of the most important things to have in place. And I believe anyone who's a legal adult should have a will, or at the very minimum, the very, very least, talk to their family members about what they want to have happen with their body when they die, whether they want to be buried or cremated, recycled, or composted.
It's interesting because I've been to a number of funerals, well over a couple, 300 maybe, over the last several decades. And I'm noticing more tendency to go toward the cremation. I'm sure part of that is cost. But I'm thinking it's also starting to become a cultural aspect of life. Uh, my brother passed away last year, and they had a scattering of his ashes at a certain place. Uh, they're talking about the same thing I told you last time we talked, that I had lost a niece, and they're giving anyway. So cost is a factor, but I think it's also a beginning to be a cultural issue. It's more acceptable, not necessarily to leave Uncle Charlie's ashes up on the fireplace mantle, but to have them properly taken care of. And so, have you seen a shift in mindset more toward cremation than burial?
I have. Ever since I became a funeral director at the age of 20, back in the 80s, Red, um, cremation was just evolving at that point or continuing to evolve. And now it's the vast majority of deaths actually result in cremation across Canada and the US, is my understanding. But now there's actually a new option that is replacing fire cremation, and it is called water cremation.
Tell me about that. I've not heard that one.
Well, it's a similar process, but a chemical solution is used instead of the fire process, which breaks down the body, and what is returned to the family afterwards is basically a similar type of gray colored ash, which is really just the broken down skeleton of the deceased. And it's a little more expensive, is my understanding, than fire cremation, but it's a much more environment friendly option, which is starting to really gain popularity in various parts of the world.
Well, that's interesting. So the end product is the same. It's just the process to how you get to those ashes is a little different.
Yes, yes.
You mentioned composting. I've kind of heard that term, but probably not in the context that you're referring to here as for disposal of a body.
Yes, that aspect or that disposition option is very, very new. I don't recall the name of the company offhand that offers that. I believe I'm quite positive the one that I'm thinking of is based out of the US, but it is a very new option that is now available. And I think it's something that it will really grow in popularity over time.
Interesting. I remember the very first time I was involved, fully involved. I was a pallbearer for a guy coming back from Vietnam. I was stationed in wherever, New York City, for a very short period. And the comment that was made to me was that if you're going to be cremated, ask the funeral home to use a cardboard casket to reduce the cost. Of course, this is 50 some years ago. I have no idea the validity of that statement, the use at that time, whatever the state laws were at that time. But it made sense. Why would you burn a perfectly good pine box, for lack of a better word? And I'm not even sure if there is a box involved. I don't know. But it was one of those things that, oh, by the way, you can do this. Um, are there some helpful hints that, for it's just talking about end of life, uh, what what would you consider for you, your family, your best friends, people that you have some influence over? What would you recommend?
Well, I would first of all recommend Red, and I know this comes across as a biased statement, but the reason that I wrote my book is really just to stress to people about the importance of speaking with their family about what they want to have happen and then plan around their objectives. And that's really the most crucial first step in this whole process, is having the courage to discuss these things. We're all going to die at some point, and this is certainly something that has been on my mind even just over the last few hours in speaking with this oncologist this morning. But if our family members know what we want to have happen, it's just so much easier on them, whether we want to be cremated or composted or buried naturally, which, by the way, does not require a container, from what I understand, Red. But this whole aspect of leading into it and being willing to talk about these things is the very first step.
Okay, and you had mentioned that last week because we talked a little bit about your book and the important factors about it. So, my wife and I have been talking lately. In fact, we actually had a conversation yesterday in the car. I'm not even sure how it came up, but about cremation. And it's one of those things. I tell you, 10 years ago, I said, yeah, I don't know, because everything I've been used to has been in a coffin. But as I'm seeing, and I'm seeing some very nice ceremonies, some very nice with the military and other, where a lot of reverence, a lot of pomp and circumstance was given not just to the coffin but to the urn, and then the burial of the urn in the ground. And I'm saying, that kind of satisfies my end of things. And obviously, the cost is an issue, but I have insurance to cover those things. I'm not as concerned about leaving a family, in an issue, but it's one of those, as I mentioned earlier, it's a mindset that I'm starting to see myself shift in. And so the point that you made, we really need to have that conversation with the people who matter, the decision makers, after we're no longer, we are the decision that has to be made.
Yes, absolutely. And in our fast-paced, advanced society, Red, I find it appalling that only about half the population of Canada and roughly the same in the US has a valid will in place. And a will is the only document where we can officially specify who is to wrap up our life when we're gone. It's vitally important. And if we don't have a will, or we have something that we think may work but actually doesn't in the eyes of the court, which basically decides at that point, it's just so vitally important that we do it right. There isn't really a do-over in this case.
Why do you think people avoid writing a will?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons, and I've spoke to many people about this, Red, over the years. I think a lot of people find this really overwhelming. Well, take my example. I just was given this news this morning from my oncologist that I've got to now take radiation treatment for this tumor in my head. It has consumed all my thoughts all morning ever since I spoke to this physician a couple of hours ago. So I understand how people can find this overwhelming. It's not a appealing topic to talk about, but it's the lesser of two evils. If we can have the courage to talk with our family about what we want to have happen and then plan appropriately, and there's many people out there, financial advisors and lawyers, etc., that can help us put the plans in place properly for our jurisdiction, and that's a vitally important point. We're better off just to have them in place and tweak them, keep them up to date as our situation changes. But many people are agreeing and proving that it allows us to live a more fulfilled life if we can do these sorts of things.
It's interesting because it's not the matter that I need to go sit down with a lawyer and draw this up. With the internet today, you can get a blank template for a will, print it out, fill it in. Thank you very much. End of story. I can take my cell phone, record a holographic will. I have many options I didn't have 50 years ago. But even then, just the mere fact that I want to say, okay, I want to be cremated, and this is what we have a reluctance. Yeah, and that reluctance is psychological to a degree, emotional to a degree, and maybe those are part of the issues. And it's somewhat of a depressive subject at times. And it usually, at least from what I've seen, somebody dies, and now all of a sudden the family starts to talk about, what about me? What about, and because of that incident, now they're focused on themselves for about 2 weeks, and then everything kind of fades away again. So you wrote a book, Do Not Ignore Your Mortality. And that is for literally everyone, from what you're talking about last time. But really, it's for the family to have a sit down, meaningful discussion about what do you want. You're going to be that person laying in a grave in a not too distant future, or whatever. How does that conversation get started? What does your book tell you about that?
Well, I did include a few conversation starters within the book, Red, but I have since developed more of them, and they're available to anyone from my website, do not ignore your mortality.com. I have a short 5-question quiz, and anyone answering the 5 questions will soon likely realize that they have some homework to do, because the percentage of people that I have seen through working in the funeral and the financial planning industry that truly have their affairs properly in order are very, very few. But I've also come up with a list of probing legacy questions, I call them, 15 for very basic types of initial conversations and 15 for more advanced conversations. And those probing legacy questions are available for anyone on my website too. They could also email me at greg@do-not-ignore-your-mortality.com, and I will send them right back without any obligation or cost. But I think it's these sorts of things that help people get these conversations moving in a meaningful way.
The 5-question quiz I took, very informative, very interesting, not daunting in any way, shape, or form. But you're right. It does. Okay, got to think about that just a second or two. So that's a good way to start. The book is available literally everywhere. Is that right? Barnes and Noble and your website and Amazon, and all of a sudden I was on a blank on Amazon. But so it's not a difficult one to get. Is there a particular place in Canada that is like an Amazon that's an easy place to get your book?
Indigo bookstores carry it as well, but as you said, Red, it's available pretty well everywhere, iTunes and Apple and so on, and it's also now available in audiobook too.
Okay. So you started out in the funeral industry, then you ended up in life insurance and financial planning. I would have to think that would probably be a very super ideal way to get into life insurance and financial planning, because not that you have 100 stories to tell, but you certainly have the background and the understanding and the exposure to a lot of things that people have questions about that you now, Charlie over here had a similar situation to that. And this is the 2 choices he had. I can easily see when you start making things a story, it makes it easier for people to identify with and easier to make decisions. Do you use stories in the process of chatting to people about their insurance and financial advice?
Yes, absolutely. I have, Red. And by the way, I no longer work actively in the funeral or the financial industry. I'm basically just promoting this book now as my full-time role. And when I worked as a financial advisor after leaving the funeral industry, yes, I told all of my clients about my background if they didn't previously know, because I wanted them to realize the importance of having all of their affairs in order and not just assessing the risks that could throw off a good retirement, such as a heart attack or a stroke or anything else, but certainly a premature death is something that would ruin a good retirement, as you can imagine. And so I openly told all of my clients that, and urged them to, for us to basically assess their overall situation to make sure that they were properly covering off these things. And most people, by the way, Red, often are underinsured when it comes to life insurance.
No doubt. We're getting to a point in time where we're going to take a quick commercial break. So I'm going to let our studio get set up for that. And when they want to go ahead and start, we'll just let them do it. And we'll be back in about a minute or so.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Steve Klein Art at steveklein.art.
My name is Steve Klein, born Manchester, England, 1953. My quest in my lifetime is to create artwork from my soul and the deepness within my wildest dreams and fantasies. In 2012, my heart stopped when I was given too much anesthetic for a minor knee operation, and this near-death experience took me to another multidimensional world, an out-of-body experience, and I was given the gift of being blessed by an overwhelming, burning passion to become for the very first time in my life an artist with an eternal passionate desire to bring my art, which I've named multidimensional, subliminal freeform art, to the world, as only 3% recover from what I experienced, and now in my golden years want to release my cosmic, vital energy through my art to allow people to be a part of my cosmic dance.
To learn more, email roccogoodwine@gmail.com. For VIP pricing, mention USA Global TV and Radio.
Fred O'Loughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And my guest today is Greg Barnsdale, best-selling author. Greg, please join me again.
Yes, thank you, Red.
Just as we were leaving, you made a comment that most people are underinsured. And you are a licensed life insurance agent. Is that something you're still doing, or is that another one of those that you've given up?
Well, I still hold my license, Red, but I'm no longer actively working in either the financial or funeral industry. But yes, and even in regards to the manuscript for my book that was just published 2 years ago, and other current articles that I'm reading, the whole aspect of people across Canada, the US, and I'm sure many other parts of the world too, being underinsured when it comes to life insurance is still very much true today, as it has been for practically many, many years.
Well, I know that things change over time. Back when I was a kid, my dad's home was, under $20,000 for all practical purposes. Now 200,000 for the same one. Home I bought in California when I got back from Vietnam was 27,000. It's probably over $1 million. Seriously, it's over $1 million because of the nature of inflation, the dollar, and other things. So we have some reserve in a property, but sometimes you don't have easy access to that cash that you do when a life insurance. Okay, when my dad died, boom, I got that taken care of. So the expediency of, it took us months, literally almost a year, to sell a home. Well, the money's there, but I don't have access to it, or easy access to it. So there's a lot to be said for that. So now you're in your, let's back up a couple years, because that seems to be a pivotal point in your life. You had been working on this book for a little while, and then all of a sudden something happened and you went in to see a doctor about some issue with your head. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, actually, this book took quite a number of years to put together, Red, but just 2 months after it was published, I was diagnosed with a large tumor in my skull, and it's called an acoustic neuroma. It's non-cancerous. Initially, I did not know that because my general physician wouldn't tell me if it was cancerous or not. He wasn't sure, and he had referred me to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And this all started actually after a deep nasal swab in my left nostril at the beginning of COVID. And the next day, I developed a ringing in my left ear, and I mentioned it to my general physician and later a specialist. And basically, I thought it was related, but they both felt it wasn't. But the MRI that I had later on actually revealed that this issue in my head was actually a large tumor. And fortunately, as I said earlier, it was non-cancerous, and I've had most of it removed. It's the remaining small portion that is now continuing to grow that needs to be treated with radiation.
I can certainly understand. I feel your pain when they're sticking that thing up my nose. I know it's going way too far.
Yeah.
It almost brings tears to my eyes. I don't know why. It seemed like saliva or some other way. There seems like there should be an easier way, but regardless. But seriously, I felt your pain when you said they shoved it up too far and something came out. So you ended up with, obviously that was a lot of, you had the book, you're trying to market it, you're trying to, get that out to the world. and a conversation we had just before the show started, and we were talking about the delicate nature of life. And that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure we covered today, is the fact that up until that point in time, you didn't know you had a tumor in your brain that was big enough to be an issue. That is, quote, a delicate nature of life. Something's growing in you, but not enough to cause a problem that you would even get a symptom from. And then there's other people who have symptoms from stuff, autoimmune diseases, that they live with, forever, because it's just our immune system is attacking ourselves, which it shouldn't be doing. So, but let's talk a little bit about this delicate nature of life. I think that's something that's that you really wanted to hone in on.
Yes. And the reason that I stress these things, and this whole point of me being transparent about what I went through, I just felt compelled, Red, to be honest with people. After I was diagnosed with this brain tumor, and it all started with a ringing in my left ear, by the way. So if anyone out there hears of or knows of anyone with a ringing, or tinnitus, as I guess is the medical term, with a ringing in one ear as opposed to two, they should get an MRI done, because it could reveal a brain tumor. And I've since been told another family member has a brain tumor as well, and she's having MRIs to monitor it, to make sure it's not growing in her case either, which I guess it is not. But MRIs are picking up more and more brain tumors all the time with people. But I've worked on the front lines as a funeral director, as what is called a last responder, for years, and I've worked closely with the police and forensics. And at one point, I was a manager with one of the supervisor, actually, with one of the largest mortuaries in all of Canada. Where in one way or another, we were dealing with more than 100 deaths each and every day. And death is all around us, but a lot of people are really tuned out to it. And I just want to remind people that this could happen to them or anyone that they know of at any point, and we just need to be prepared rather than ignoring these important conversations when minds are clear and time is plentiful.
Okay, we talked about a couple items already: a will and life insurance, both of which we're seeing half the continent without proper wills, and probably underinsured or not insured at all in many cases, particularly for afterlife expenses. Are there other aspects of life that we should consider now and not leave that burden to others?
Yes. One of the things that comes to mind, Red, is the fact that when I was a young financial advisor, my mentor told me that I should really be walking my talk, and also, updating my own life insurance for my previous wife and I had 3 young children at home, and I should also be looking to protect myself in the event that I had a stroke or an accident or anything else. So I did that. I updated my life insurance. I bought critical illness insurance and disability insurance. And fortunately, back then, I had bought a rider on my critical illness insurance that covered brain tumors, of all things. I didn't like paying the premiums all these years, but thankfully I had it. And on the day of my craniotomy 2 years ago, the insurance company paid a nice tax-free benefit to me on the day of my craniotomy. And how ironic is that?
Yeah, irony is an amazing thing. So I can remember almost 30 years ago, the push at that. It's always been a push, but I can remember. I'm trying to think of what they actually call it. It's a insurance that when you end up being put into a facility and it covers your daily. There's a word for it, and I can't. Long-term care.
Yes.
Okay. And they had options, and okay, fine. I had somebody come by and they talked, and we, signed on the dotted line, and it's one of those things. Okay, fine. Real good coverage. Liked it. I had a rider on it, 3% a year, because the price of money goes up and this. And then all of a sudden I get a little bit older and the price goes up 30%. And whoa, I don't remember them talking about that. and then it goes up again, and it goes up again. I guess just getting older, I get the opportunity to pay more money, part of life. But then they ended up in some issue, and the ironic part, kind of like yours, the irony is that there was a lawsuit. I still have the majority of my long-term care policy still available to me, but it's capped. But I ended up with a check for a certain amount of money as part of the settlement, and I had to rearrange the extra. I mean, several things I had to do to give up in order to get that. But wow, I really needed that at that time. Just like the day that you got your check, uh, I had never planned on getting money out of this one. It was one of those ones, I'll pay whoever needs whatever. And then we have friends, dementia and other things that are creeping into their lives. And, oh, this is costing them, $3,000, $4,000 a month to live there. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know if my insurance would cover that kind of out of pocket expense, because it really and truly is. But it does cover somebody coming into my home and taking care of me, which I think is
Yes.
maybe a better quality of life. So can we go on quality of life issues for a minute? Because you've been very exposed to hospice. You've been very exposed to people in a variety of situations. Um, what's your thoughts on on that last year of life where there's some level of control over what you can do?
Well, you raised some great points, Red, and I think to a large degree, many people are more interested in quality of life than quantity of life. And I've had this conversation with my surviving 90-year-old father a number of times too, in regards to his do not resuscitate order and so on. But we all have goals and objectives. And I think ultimately, if we can speak to someone who can help us arrange our goals and objectives properly, whether that's through insurance or will planning or whatever, long-term care insurance, disability insurance, critical illness insurance, or whatever, we're far better off going down that path to make sure that things are properly structured based on what we want, as opposed to strictly just leaning on the internet. And this is something that I wanted to disclose within my message in the book too. I openly tell people that yes, you can set up a will online as an example for very, very little money without having to go and visit a lawyer. But as with most things in life, we get what we pay for. And if you have an ex spouse, you should be seeing a lawyer and not doing this online. If you have a disabled child, the same things apply. Or if you own any part of a business or property outside of your jurisdiction, setting up a will online as an example is can be acceptable for very, very basic situations.
The will in and of itself takes care of a certain legal aspect. I mean, I know a lot of people who entered. In fact, we have our former neighbor. Both her parents died without a will, and they're still. I mean, we're talking well over a decade later. Big money in big money in taxes that haven't been paid on the property because they can't sell it because they can't get. I mean, a lot of legal problems there. And you wouldn't think something as simple as a will settles all those things, but you end up with this family member not wanting to do something, or they're not talking to each other, and so it's just not the mere fact I don't have a will. It's the family dynamics. It's the other things that the dotted I's and crossed T's, as you talked about. Lots of extenuating circumstances really should bump up your priority on getting that particular, because that's such an easy one to get. And in most cases, you can get them. I think we paid for a will not long ago update. I've had about 20 of them over my life with the military and going places. In fact, I got a stack of them there. Yeah, I'm talking about a big stack of wills that I need to shred. That under $100, and it saves so much trouble that why would you not want to do that? Other than the fact that, yeah, I'm staring death in the face. I don't really want to talk about it. But the one thing I wanted absolutely to point out was that when I asked you about what we should plan for from a financial perspective the last time we talked, which is a week or so ago, you hit something on the nail that nobody else that I've asked a similar question to. And you said, go research, learn what's out there, as opposed to, well, you should have this and this and this, and I thought that was such a great answer, because me as a researcher, that's what I do for a living. But you are saying you really need to understand what's there. So go do your own research, do your due diligence for what's really important to you. So take that away for another moment, because I thought it was just a really important thing that you talked about.
Well, yes, I think it just makes much more sense for pretty well everyone, Red, to be honest, because the jurisdictional rules, whether it's in a particular province here in Canada or a territory or a state within the US or in other parts of the world, as an example, all the jurisdictional rules and so on differ from place to place. And the options to save for retirement can differ as well. Insurance products, I think, are generally very similar, but everyone's situation is different. Everyone's goals and objectives differ based on their situation. It could be very basic or it could be very involved with a company, a family corporation, etc. But if we are diligent and do our own due diligence and just read up on these sorts of things and speak to different people and learn about what our options are, I think that ultimately inspires more people to be more proactive. And this will help solve the issue of financial literacy as well, which has been needing to be improved for decades and decades. And that's ultimately, I think, my best advice.
Fantastic. Greg, you said right now you're concentrating on getting your book sold, marketing it, letting people know what's out there, speaking as needed at events. So why don't you take a minute to tell people how they get your book, how they get in touch with you?
Yes. Well, you said earlier, my book can be found pretty well everywhere, but it's the easiest way to find it here, as you've pulled up, is my website, do not ignore your mortality.com. The book is available in physical form, ebook and audiobook through Apple, iTunes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and also for organizations or groups that want to potentially buy physical copies of my book at a steep discount. They can do that directly through myself, and that's also mentioned on the website as well. But the best way to reach me is through my email address, which is greg@do-not-ignore-your-mortality.com.
Okay, for our audio audience, it's Greg, Greg, it's one G at the end, at do not ignore, just exactly, no spaces, no dots, no anything. Do not ignore your mortality. Mortality, mortality.com. So, Greg, thank you so very much for your time today. I look forward to our next conversation. And again, if you, and I absolutely, you're in our prayers for your treatments coming up, radiation treatments for your brain cancer. And I would truly appreciate somewhere down the road, just send me a quick email saying, surviving well, and just I'd like to follow up just to make sure that I can see your smiling face again.
Okay, I will do that, Red. Thank you.
I really appreciate that, Greg. Thank you very much. That concludes our show today, The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. I'm Red O'Loughlin, and the next show coming up literally in about 22 minutes is called Talking Heads. It's a show where I pick a topic and I talk about it for a while. Sometimes those topics go on for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. We go into a lot of depth and detail. I'm a researcher. I research the human body to find out what causes things to happen. I try to specialize in longevity and age-related diseases so that, okay, if you do this, you can slow down that. If you do this, you're going to speed that up. And so I try to look at disease processes. Okay, if it's going to start here, what can I do? And we talked about pain relief recently. And most pain starts at the cellular level with the arachidonic acid caused by the acyclooxygenase enzyme. Well, you can shut that enzyme down pretty quickly, but you have to understand what's going on and know what to apply at what time. So there's a lot of options. So today we're talking about wellness, and I want to talk about some of the metrics involved in wellness and what you should and could do. So with that, I'm going to bid you all adieu and catch you on the Wise Ones or next week, or catch you with Talking Heads coming up here in just a few minutes. Take care, y'all. Bye now.
Meet Red O'Loughlin, TV show host, presenter, and author.
Howdy, y'all. Red O'Loughlin here. I'm a TV host on the USA Global TV and Radio Network.
Red has 3 weekly shows every Thursday.
I've been a TV host now with USA Global probably maybe just a little over 3 years. Probably, I know for sure, 250, 300 shows.
Join Red on the Corner Bookstore.
The Corner Bookstore is one where we talk to authors, publicists, publishers, editors, cover designers, anybody associated with the writing and authoring book production business. You have somebody in that area, I can help you with regard to getting your book done, getting it published, working with you on a cover. A lot of things I can help people with, and I have probably maybe published over 40 books for people so far.
Join Red on the Wise Ones.
On the Wise Ones, I'm looking for entrepreneurs, business owners, people who have wisdom, lessons learned over time that they can share with others. So please go to usaglobaltv.com, sign up, and join me there.
Book your session on usaglobaltv.com. Join Red on Talking Heads.
On Talking Heads, I take my experience. I fell in love with chemistry many years ago, got a degree in it, got an invitation to Vietnam, never practiced chemistry per se, but I did get a chance when my wife was going through chemo to get back into the chemical end of things. I started looking for cause and effect relationships. I had been working at a company doing cause and effect analysis on failures in the field on various products that we made. So I said, why not look at the cellular structure in the body? The chemicals are chemicals. They do certain things. So I take my knowledge of chemistry and research. I write about it. I speak about it. I have over 1,000 original content articles on LinkedIn, most of them dealing with some aspect of health or wellness. I speak on that topic quite often, and the Talking Head Show is one that I concentrate my knowledge of health and wellness on in order to help people.
Red is a distinguished Toastmaster.
As a distinguished Toastmaster, I help people get their speeches developed. The presentation is something that I critique all the time with Toastmasters. It's one of those skills that I have. I can easily help you on that one. So from a position of writing, publishing, book coach, speaking, and being a keynote speaker at an event or virtually, depending on how things work out. But those are the things that I can help people with, and I have 3 shows every week here on the USA Global TV and Network, and please join me when you can. Appreciate it. Bye now.
Here are some of the books that Red has written and published. Contact Red at redolaughlin.com.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.